Austin, Texas, Thursday, January 13th, 2022. The auction. The auction company sent 3 people. They spent 4 hours tagging assets. We're going to take Meridian's failure apart. The reason it failed, when you trace it to its source, is not the one in the filing. 63 employees, 8 years. The developer of the software, used by various firms to monitor employee mental health, was sold via a distressed asset auction. The lead investor had put in the majority of that capital. The founder was not present at the sale. She sent one email to the board at 4:23 in the morning. Then she turned off her phone, and she did not turn it back on for 28 days. Meridian was not supposed to be a cautionary tale. It was supposed to be the answer to one.
The company was built to catch people before they fall. That was the whole point. Every product decision, every hire, we knew the signs. We had built the system. We had sold it to hundreds of companies. We knew the signs.
She did know the signs. That was the problem. How does a person who spent 8 years building a system to prevent exactly this become the person the system was built for? The answer isn't what you'd expect. West Texas, Thursday, October 10th, 1996. The origin. Elena's father spent 18 years designing drainage systems for the city. He was good at it. Not the kind of good that gets noticed, the quiet kind. The kind that means the roads don't flood. In 1996, the city's Public Works Department reorganized. They didn't eliminate his position. They reclassified it. Gave the same work to a contracted firm at 60 cents on the dollar. He had no union protection. He came home on a Thursday. He did not go back on Friday. No one from the city called to check on him. No HR department, no wellness program, no system. Elena was 11 years old. She made his coffee every morning before school. She didn't tell anyone why. She just remembered what the kitchen sounded like at 6 in the morning when it was otherwise completely silent. He recovered. It took most of a year.
My dad he was the smartest, saddest person I knew. And the system had no mechanism to catch him. Nobody asked, nobody looked. He just fell out of the bottom of it. He recovered, eventually, but I don't think he ever stopped waiting for it to happen again. I built the company so that couldn't happen anymore, so that someone would always be looking. I built it to be the thing that would have caught him.
Austin, Texas, August 2007. The thesis. Elena arrived at UT Austin on a partial scholarship and a stubbornness that, according to her roommate Priya, left you no middle ground. You loved it immediately, or you found it slightly terrifying. Her senior thesis received a B-. The UT professor's margin note said, "Interesting but speculative."
Speculative. I kept that paper.
That was the academic argument. The product came from somewhere else entirely. Austin, Elena's garage, September 2015, year 1. Elena is 30 years old. She has just left a director of people operations role at a mid-sized software company in Austin. She has $47,000 in savings and an idea she has been drafting in notebooks since 2012. Marcus Webb had 2 competing job offers the week Elena called him. One from a fintech in San Francisco, one from a major investment bank, significant salary, full benefits, partner track. He took the garage. He has never fully explained why, except to say that Elena described the problem in a way that made every other job feel like a slightly smaller life. The product was deceptively simple. Employees completed anonymous pulse check surveys. The algorithm triangulated stress indicators across departments, flagged patterns, and gave teams an early warning dashboard, a way to see collective breakdown before it became individual crisis. Elena named the company Meridian, after the line that runs exactly between 2 places. Priya still has the voicemail from the night they closed the seed round. Elena was crying. Not upset crying, the other kind. She said, "Priya, I think I'm going to build the thing that would have caught my dad." The origin story was complete. What came next was not failure, not yet. It was the accumulation of decisions that would make failure eventually the only available outcome. Wednesday, May 15th, 2019. Meridian HQ. By year 5, Meridian has enterprise clients across 3 industry verticals. Annual recurring revenue is in 8 figures, a team of 61 people, and a term sheet from the lead investor firm, $18 million. Elena had wanted to raise $4 million. The board pushed for 18. The argument was simple. The market was moving fast. 2 well-funded competitors had just closed their own rounds, and Meridian's product lead would not hold without capital. The argument was correct. Elena signed the term sheet on a Wednesday. The first thing she did was fly to Chicago for a keynote she had agreed to 6 months earlier. She landed, checked into the Marriott on Michigan Avenue, opened her laptop, and worked until 3 in the morning. She did not sleep on the plane.
The 18 million felt like a mandate, like we had been handed something we had an obligation to spend. I don't know why I framed it that way. I should have framed it as runway. I framed it as responsibility. Those are very different things.
Between the funding close and the end of that fiscal year, Meridian hired 27 people. Elena personally interviewed every one of them. She also managed 3 board observer meetings, 2 investor updates, a contract renegotiation with their largest client, and a complete product roadmap overhaul. She was doing all of it at once. She was doing all of it alone. Marcus noticed it the way you notice the temperature in a room has changed. Not because anything specific shifted, but because you suddenly feel slightly colder than you did 10 minutes ago. She had stopped eating at her desk. A 20-minute lunch, a book, or a paper had been Elena's daily ritual since year 1. She stopped doing it. At first, Marcus thought she was just busy. Then he understood. She'd always been busy. This was something else. He raised it directly. He told her she didn't seem okay, not as a question, as an observation. She said she'd be okay when they hit $1 million in new ARR that quarter. She said, "Let me focus." Marcus let it go. February 2020, Year 6, Q1, the expansion. The investor firm's board seats came with a new priority, a chief revenue officer, someone with enterprise SaaS scale experience, someone who had done this before. Elena agreed to the hire, but she did not fully agree to what it meant. The first real conflict was the sales model. Kellner wanted a high-touch enterprise tier, dedicated account managers, white glove onboarding, premium pricing. Elena believed the product had to be self-serve. Adding friction to onboarding contradicted the platform's entire philosophy, that catching people in distress had to be frictionless, or it wouldn't happen at all. She was right about the philosophy, but the board sided with Kellner.
I started to feel like I was fighting on 2 fronts. Fighting for the product direction, fighting to stay functional. And you cannot do both of those things at the same time for a sustained period and win either of them. I didn't understand that then. I understood it after.
That was the product problem, but the relational debt was already in collection. August 2020, Meridian HQ, the analyst. Danny Park had been at the company for about 18 months when she submitted a product brief to Elena and the leadership team. The brief was titled, "Response Latency as a Leading Indicator of Cultural Health, an Internal Case Study." Using anonymized internal data, the brief showed that the company's own product health was deteriorating, and that the cause traced back to leadership communication patterns. Turns out it was the most accurate diagnosis the company had ever received.
I read the brief, but I thought she was overstepping. I thought she was a junior analyst who had been at the company for a year and a half and had no idea what it looked like to hold the whole thing together. I was right that she didn't know what it felt like. I was wrong about everything else.
Danny was 26 years old. She had no emotional stake in Elena's ego. She just described what she saw. Danny left the company 3 weeks later. Elena processed the exit interview the same afternoon it arrived. She did not read the brief again. Sunday, June 14th, 2020. The warning. Priya flew to Austin, not for work. She drove to Elena's house and found the curtains closed at 2 in the afternoon on a Sunday. At the coffee shop, she told Elena directly, "You need to talk to someone. A therapist, a doctor, someone." Elena said she had a therapist. Priya asked when she had last gone. Turns out Elena had not been to therapy in 8 months. She was running a company whose core product was an early warning system for exactly this. Priya sat with her, but she didn't push. She thought Elena would find her own way back. Meridian HQ, January 2021, Year 7. The new CRO and Elena disagreed about almost everything that mattered, and the board had made clear, across a series of small decisions, whose instincts they trusted more. Elena had stopped going to the Thursday all-hands. Not abruptly, she began arriving late, then sending a deputy, then sending a written update instead. She was working until midnight regularly, then past midnight. Not because the work required it, actually because the work was the last place she still felt like herself. The company's own product, the one she built, would have flagged this. The algorithm tracked sentiment and communication patterns, response latency, meeting acceptance rates, the ratio of text to other signals in internal messaging, which had correlated across years of enterprise data with psychological availability. Nobody ran the analysis on the founder. Tuesday, January 12th, 2021. The resignation. Marcus Webb had been with Elena since the garage. He had turned down a career-defining salary to tape user flows to a corkboard in a space with broken air conditioning. He had not taken a paycheck for the first 6 months of the company's life. He had been trying to reach her for months. Not just about the product disagreements. He'd been watching her for signs of what he knew how to recognize. He had built the product too. He knew exactly what the dashboard would have said. She had stopped returning his messages in the evenings, then his messages in the afternoons. He had emailed her directly, twice, with a specific subject line. 5 minutes, not about work. She had replied both times with a meeting agenda. He submitted his resignation on a Tuesday morning. She accepted the resignation. She sent an internal message, 3 sentences, thanking Marcus for his years of service. She worked until midnight that night. July 2021, Year 7, the churn. The data told a story Elena had stopped reading. The clients who left cited in their exit surveys a category the platform itself used to measure organizational health: response latency. How quickly a company responds to its own distress signals. The irony was structural, not incidental. A company that had stopped responding to its own distress was losing clients for failing to respond to theirs. She had booked the cabin at 11 o'clock at night in a parking garage while the city moved around her. She hadn't told anyone.
I kept thinking, just one more quarter, one more meeting, one more deliverable, one more round of funding, and then I'll have time to actually take care of myself. And then. There is no and then. That's the thing nobody tells you.
Monday, January 3rd, 2022, the last decision. The board meeting ran 3 hours and 40 minutes. They asked Elena to step aside as CEO and move into a founder chair role while interim leadership was brought in. They framed it as a strategic decision about scale stage requirements. It was not a strategic decision. Meridian failed because Elena Vasquez spent 8 years building a system to catch people before they fall and could not make herself use it. That's not irony. It's something more specific. A blind spot the work itself built into her. Here's what that blind spot actually was. The company's diagnostic framework worked by measuring the subject against a threshold. Simple, repeatable, scalable. The machine identifies distress. The alert goes to the manager. Someone acts. It worked for 340 enterprise clients. The threshold was never applied to Elena, not by the board, not by Marcus, not by Danny, and not by Elena herself, because at some point, without knowing she had done it, she had installed a rule inside herself that said, "This tool is for other people. I built it. I run it. But I am not its subject." Call it the diagnostic firewall, the unconscious mechanism by which the founder exempts herself from the same framework the company was built to apply to everyone else. It is not arrogance. It is the logical endpoint of the origin wound. She built the system to catch people like her father, not people like herself. She was not the kind of person who needed catching. She was the person who did the catching. That belief was the product of 18 years of operating on a specific premise, that if she built the right system and ran it correctly, nobody else would have to feel what her father felt. The system was an act of protection aimed outward. She had never once aimed it inward. She built the company to prove that her father's invisible crisis was preventable, that someone, somewhere, paying attention, would have made a difference, that the silence in the kitchen at 6 in the morning did not have to be the only answer. She proved it. For hundreds of companies and their employees. She could not prove it for herself, because to apply the system to herself would have required admitting that she was not the rescuer. She was one of the people who needed rescuing, and that conclusion was the one thing her entire psychology was organized around preventing.
The reason I started the company, my dad, the coffee machine, the silence in the kitchen, I kept that alive. I kept it as the reason. But somewhere it also became the rule. You don't fall. You don't fall because if you fall, it means the system you built doesn't work. And if the system doesn't work, then your father fell for nothing. That's not business logic. That's something else. That's the thing I should have put on someone's desk years earlier. I put everything else there, not that. The saddest part isn't that I burned out. The saddest part is that I had the exact tool to see it coming. I had built it with my own hands. My own hands. And I looked the other way.
The sale closed in January. The company was gone. Elena was not present for the signing. She had sent the email at 4:23 in the morning. She had turned off her phone. She had driven to the cabin she'd booked in the parking garage that night, a rental outside a small town in northern New Mexico. Pine trees, flat winter light, the kind of silence that is not empty, but is full of things that are not failing. She stayed 28 days. She did not open her laptop once. On the third morning, she sent one message, to Priya. It said, "I'm okay. I'll explain later." This is why Meridian failed. Elena wanted to raise $4 million, but the board pushed for 18. That money did not buy her time. Instead, it bought her a clock, a pace of hiring and spending that someone had to hold together. She made herself that someone. The board hired a CRO whose instincts were the opposite of hers. She wanted the product frictionless. He wanted it profitable. The board picked his side, and Elena stopped showing up to the room where the decisions were made. Denny Park wrote a brief that diagnosed the problem exactly, using the company's own data. Elena read the cover page and dismissed it. Danny left 3 weeks later, and nobody opened the brief again. Elena had a therapist, but she stopped going. Not as a decision. Actually, she just kept rescheduling, and 8 months passed. She was running a company built to catch that exact pattern in other people. One more quarter, one more deliverable, one more round, one more meeting. She could not stop. Stopping felt like proof that the system she built did not work. She built Meridian to catch people like her father. That was the mission. But it was aimed outward, at employees, at clients. Never at her. By By the time anyone thought to turn it inward, there was nobody left with the authority to do it. Elena is doing better. That's the only way to put it that isn't either too optimistic or a lie. She has since moved into advisory work with early-stage founders. She sees a therapist every Thursday at 4 o'clock. She told me that detail specifically. She wanted me to say it out loud. 2 things she asked me to pass on. She was precise about them. The first, burnout does not announce itself. It erodes. Slowly, then completely. The signal is never dramatic. It's the lunch you stop eating at your desk, the call you stop returning, the meeting you attend with your body while your mind has already left the building. Elena built a product that could detect this in other people at a granular, measurable level. She is telling you, from inside that experience, the founder is not exempt from the data. The founder is the most important data point in the company. If you won't measure yourself, you are running blind in the room that matters most. The second, the mission can become the justification for self-sabotage. This is the trap for people who build from a wound. The wound gives them a reason, and after a while the reason starts to feel like permission, to keep going past the point where a sane person would stop, because stopping feels like betrayal. I can't stop. Not yet. Look at what I built this for. That's how it sounds from the inside. The story you told about your father, the kitchen, the silence, why you built this, starts to look like the thing that drove the collapse. If the reason you built the company is the same reason you can't stop to sleep, that's not vision. That's a wound you have never looked at directly, and it will catch up with you. You've just watched a company come apart at the seam. There are more, and the seams are rarely different. Subscribe, and we'll keep finding them. She told me one more thing. Off the record, technically, but she said I could use it if I thought it would help someone. She said, when she was 11 years old, she made her father coffee every morning before school. They just had that. The coffee, the quiet, the 6 o'clock kitchen. And when it was all over and she drove to the cabin, the first morning she was there, she made coffee. And she sat with it. And she didn't take it anywhere. She just sat. She said it was the first morning in years she hadn't been performing anything for anyone. She said the coffee tasted exactly the same, yet different. And 3 days later, she texted Priya, just to say she was okay. Priya has kept that message.